Okay, welcome to the Michigan Works Association 2021 Annual Conference. My name is Lupe Hamden, and I am a career advisor for Michigan Works Southeast. And on behalf of the staff at the association and all the sponsors, we thank you for being a part of the conference this session titled Developing a Replicable Industry-Focused Workforce Training Ecosystem. And a big shout out thanks to the Equas Workforce Solutions for sponsoring today's workshop session. Our sponsors help us make the conference happen, and we are very thankful for their support. Along with our sponsor, our exhibitors who have also given their time to be a part of their event, be sure to visit the exhibitors' booths during the designated exhibit hall times. And before we begin today's session, there are a few housekeeping that I'd like to share with you. Please make sure your audio is muted. Also, during the presentation today, we have our presenters that will allow questions throughout the presentation. If you do happen to have a question, feel free to enter in the chat, and they would like to answer those questions as we go forward. Also, you'll notice that there is in the chat a survey that we would like for you to take a look at, and please complete at the end of the presentation. And presentations today will be available as well too throughout the conference, so please enjoy the rest of the session. And currently right now we have, and I'd like to present you, Melissa Sheldon, Director of Regional Workforce Training Initiatives with Workforce Intelligence Network, Rana Igor, Regional Director of Workforce Programs with Southeast Michigan Community Alliance, and Sandra Miller, Project Coordinator with Schoolcraft College. Ladies.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lupe, and thank you everyone for joining us. We're really excited about this session and sharing with you all of the wonderful things that we have done as a regional partnership. So we look forward to interacting with you. Please, as Lupe indicated, please add your questions to the chat as we go along, and we'll be happy to answer those throughout the session. We'll also have time at the end for questions too, if you think of anything as we're going or as we're wrapping up. So again, welcome. We are so happy to be here. Rana and Sandy are joining me, and what we would like to do is walk you through our collaborative, that is, our regional collaborative, and what we've accomplished as part of the Advanced Michigan Catalyst Initiative. So we'll be talking through the foundation of how the collaborative came to be, the workforce development perspective, and their part of that whole puzzle, and then our education involvement. Then we'll talk a little bit about the project sustainability and how we were able to gain that national recognition. And then, like I said, we'll have time for questions and answers at the end as well. So hopefully you'll enjoy the content that we have to share with you today. So we've introduced ourselves. Our contact information will be in this PowerPoint presentation that will be shared as well. So if you have any questions after the session, please feel free to reach out to us. Each of us are happy to answer questions about the workforce side of things, education, and I can certainly speak to the entire collaborative or the WIN perspective per se. So to talk about the foundation, we really need to talk about the formation of the Workforce Intelligence Network. So the Workforce Intelligence Network is a division of Semco, so the Southeast Michigan Community Alliance. They serve as our fiduciary and handle all of those matters for us. We operate as a separate entity, but we are a division of Semco. We represent all of the community colleges and the Michigan Works agencies throughout Southeast Michigan. So initially in its formation, we were, the Detroit metro area and the surrounding counties, and then we grew to Michigan Works Southeast, their service area. And now most recently, we've expanded to the Lansing area and added our friends at Capital Area Michigan Works in Lansing Community College. So WIN was really born to 10 years ago. So it's been 10 years already. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, which is really exciting. But the workforce and education partners saw the need for a combined effort, right? So we're trying to help these employers. We're connecting job seekers, but what we really want to do is make sure that we're doing it in the most efficient way, that we're doing it with employers at the table, and we have this common approach to the way that we are addressing their talent shortages, so to speak. So bringing the partners together was really important, but bringing them together and driving their initiatives using data, that was really, really important. So we were using traditional labor market information and analyzing that, partnered with real-time labor market job posting data to really give a good sense of, where are we headed, what are the needs, and making sure that everyone was on the same page and understanding where we were, where our shortcomings were as a region in terms of talent development. So all of these partners came together, and the mission of WIN became to cultivate a cohesive talent system by facilitating that data-driven workforce solutions to ensure responsiveness to labor market demands. So we really want to make sure that we're providing those solutions. And we do that through 3 pillars. So we have obviously the data that's critical. It's a foundation of everything that we do as a collaborative. We involve the employers, which is, just as critical, especially when we're talking about developing an industry replicable training or talent pipeline. And then we're developing those solutions and we're offering them to the region. And all the while we're maintaining our outreach, consistent outreach and communication throughout, not just between our partners, but throughout the region with all stakeholders. So once this collaborative came together, it was determined that we had some gaps, right? So we're very heavy in manufacturing, and looking at the data, we saw that there were a lot of needs from the employer perspective specific to robotics and automation and advanced manufacturing. So in 2016, the America's Promise grant funding announcement came out. The partners came together. So as you're thinking about, how can I replicate this in my area? What was really crucial in the beginning was just that open and transparent communication between each of the partners, talking about the funding opportunity and is this a good fit? Why is it a good fit? What employers can we bring to the table and include in the planning process to determine if what we're seeing in the data is actually reality for them? So all of those partners came together and developed a plan that was ultimately submitted and accepted by the Department of Labor for this project that ended up being $6 million in scope. So the period of performance was 2017 through originally 2020, but because of the pandemic and some of the things we'll talk about a little bit later, we did end up receiving a 1-year extension. So we're still actively in the period of performance for this project. It will end at the end of this year. And our geography for this particular project was Prosperity Region 6, 9, and 10, which is made up of 16 different counties. So based on the data, based on what we were hearing from employers like FANUC and some other major players throughout the region, robotics and automation became our focus. And we not only were driven by that data, but we had those industry partners, come to our meetings, talk to our partners about their experience, what their struggles were in terms of hiring, and also for hiring. skill set wise. So not just the process of finding and identifying those candidates, but really making sure they had the right skill sets for the positions that they needed to onboard people for. And obviously that involved a lot of continuous communication and really ever evolving planning with our partners to make this a success. So over time, we were able to serve the original intent of the grant. We wanted to serve unemployed and underemployed workers as well as incumbent workers, just due to the nature of the work. We knew we had some employers that would have individuals that had transferable skills that would want to be upskilled, and that certainly was the case. So we had a really lofty goal throughout the region to serve 900 people throughout the period of performance. And to date, we've been able to really hit a lot of our metrics. We've served 832 total participants so far, and you can see the breakdown here on the screen of unemployed and underemployed versus incumbent workers. But what we're really proud of, especially given the pandemic, as an extra wrench, I'll say, in the process, is we've got nearly 400 people employed in our target occupation. So, nationally, we've been recognized as one of the top performing grantees, and it's really the collaboration between our partners that has been the greatest success in helping us not only achieve in the Department of Labor's eyes, but exceed our employment outcomes for those participants. That has just been absolutely critical. So we're very proud of that. And where we're going to go next. So Rana's going to talk about the specifics of the workforce development aspects and the day in and day out, how we accomplish these goals. And then Sandy will then come on and talk about the education perspective and where the training ties in and how we were able to incorporate the employer feedback at every turn and infuse it into our curriculum. So with that, I'll hand things over to Rana. But again, please be sure to put your questions into the chat if you have questions as we're going along. Rana, I'll hand it to you.
Thanks, Melissa. Hi, everyone. I'm Rana L. Igo with Semco Michigan Works. We're one of the Michigan Works agencies in Southeast Michigan that assisted with the grant. Obviously, Melissa talked about the wonderful partnership, not only between the MWAs and the community colleges, but also with the employers and our partners in the area. Next slide, Melissa. So I'm going to talk specifically first about eligible participants. So as with many of our federal grants, participant eligibility is largely dictated by the US DOL. And for us, it was very important to provide written local policy to our case managers and our partners to make sure that we were recruiting for eligible participants to join and participate in training. So for us, the guidance was that individuals had to be a U.S. citizen or eligible to work in the U.S., 16 years or older, not currently enrolled in school, of course, registered with selective services. And so those are typically what we generally see with our DOL grants. And then, as Melissa said, our target population for this grant were unemployed and underemployed, with a small fraction of the grant set aside for incumbent workers. And so our written guidance provided eligibility determination and also source documentation. So not only did you have to demonstrate that they were eligible, you had to collect, of course, paperwork and document that they were eligible for the DOL for when they came in and monitored us. Next slide. We also had to make sure we were providing training that was allowable under the grant. And so Melissa talked about advanced manufacturing career pathways with a specific focus on robotics and automation. Most of our training was in CNC, PLC, and then robotics technicians, robotic welders, maintenance workers, things like that, again, along the advanced manufacturing career pathway. The training had to result in industry recognized credential. And so we typically see that of our DOL grants these days. And our wage target is actually $16.61 an hour, which is pretty ambitious. Again, with our incumbent workers, we were hoping to make sure that we got great wages for folks that were going through this training. Through our proposal to the DOL, we provided preference to community college programs. That was, of course, due to the great partnership that we have at WIN. WIN board members, as Melissa mentioned, were our Michigan Works agencies and community college partners. And so, again, it was important for us to recognize that and include it in the proposal. Our average cost of training for unemployed and underemployed individuals for this grant was budgeted at $4,500 per participant. We also had an allowance in the grant of 10% for supportive services. So for those that were unemployed, underemployed, we did have funding in the grant to support individuals who needed help with transportation, childcare, things like that. As Melissa mentioned, our original goal was to have the grant completed by 2020, but there was an extension. And so ideally, we want folks to finish their training and enter employment by the end of this calendar year. Next slide. For incumbent workers, which again, we had about 25% target of serving incumbent workers, same career pathways. And the goal, of course, since they're already employed, is for them to be promoted into a new job title with wages at or above $16.61. Again, preference to community college programs. And for this, originally we budgeted $3,500, but found that we had enough room in our budget to go up to $5,500. So currently that's our budget for incumbent workers. For these, we did not have supportive services available since folks are working. We didn't budget supportive services in our grant for incumbent workers. And then again, same training end date. Next slide. For this grant, of course, maintaining documentation and maintaining participant counts and information is important. So WIN procured a system for us to do so. Since this grant is outside of our typical Michigan Works grants, we needed a separate database system to collect information on individuals. So through the grant, we have access to a content management system where we enter participant information. We can share information with our other MWA partners. We can pull reports. And of course, our guidance that we provided to our staff provided information and guidance on how to enter folks, how to pull data on them. And that's how we collect information and are able to report to WIN as our grant management team on how we're doing. Next slide. Of course, we encourage co-enrollments with our staff. So some typical co-enrollments that we've seen through Catalyst has been through WIOA Adult, WIOA Dislocated Worker, Out of School Youth, and then most recently Going Pro Talent Fund with a caveat that we didn't want any funds that were provided to incumbent workers or new hires to impact the employer match that they promised during their application period. So there's an example here of Going Pro Talent Fund paying $1,500, an employer matching that with $1,500, and then the balance being paid out of Catalyst or one of our other grants through co-enrollment. Next slide. We talk about participant supports and some of the case management that we did with our individuals that were enrolled. Up front, it was very important for us to make sure we did a comprehensive assessment of individuals, making sure that they had the aptitude and the desire to go through this training. Managing expectations, again, was a very critical piece. We did that in conjunction, of course, with our training providers to make sure that participants understood the duration of the training, the intensity of the training, and not only the training, but employment afterwards. So these are the types of jobs you'll expect to get afterwards. These are the type of atmosphere that you'll be working with, the types of wages you'll be making, and so on and so forth. So that's a really critical piece upfront that we wanted to make sure that our case managers did with our participants, even before enrolling them into training. We also talk about roles and responsibilities of participants to stay engaged with us, to stay inform us of anything that might come up, just making sure that we establish great relationships with them, again, so that we can make sure that they're successful. And then, of course, ongoing coaching, typically what you would see of a Michigan Works agency providing that ongoing coaching, not only through their training, but also onto employment. That was another critical piece of support that we provided to the participants. I mentioned supportive services that were made available, and that includes some wraparound services for individuals and remediation and readiness. So if folks maybe didn't have the mathematics or reading skills that were needed to enroll in training, we were able to provide some remediation to help get them to the point where they could participate. And that was something that we wrote in the grant as well. That was also important to make sure that we had folks that were successful. And then lastly, employment placement after training. Sandra will talk a little bit about how we worked with employers and how they came, to the campus to see what folks were doing. But employment placement was another critical piece to make sure that folks got employment, of course, after the training, which ultimately is one of our main goals. Next slide. So Melissa talked a bit about the overall performance metrics of the overall grant. I thought it would be helpful to share Semco's goals, and I apologize, they look kind of small, so I'm going to see if I can enlarge it on my screen. So originally our grant, Semco's portion of the grant, our outcomes were to serve 144 individuals. Through some renegotiating and some additional funds, we were able to up our goal to 175 participants served. And you can see that first sort of donut, we're at currently 191. So we've exceeded that goal, and we continue to serve individuals through the grant. Our target population served, which are those unemployed, underemployed. Our target is, I think I have those reversed, 172, and we've served 175. Our incumbent workers served, we still have a little bit of room here to grow. So we've got we're 6 shy of our 25, our goal of 25. For incumbents that have completed training in advance, we're 5 for 5. And then you can see the rest of the measures we've exceeded: enrolled in education, completed education with credential. And then the one that we're most proud of is obtained employment. Our goal was 50, just recognizing that most of the population were unemployed and underemployed, just a tough group, I think. And so we're very proud that we were able to place 109 individuals in employment, and hopefully that number will continue to grow as we've got about 2.5 more months left of training for folks. Of course, we couldn't do any of this work without our wonderful partners, and that includes our community college partners. One of those is Schoolcraft College, so I'm going to turn it over to Sandra to talk about their role in the grant. Sandra?
Thank you, Rana. Thank you, Melissa. I'm very excited to be here speaking with you today about this grant. I was deeply involved in this grant, very excited when it was first announced. It was kind of a follow-up for Schoolcraft College, which is in Western Wayne County outside of Detroit. It was a follow-up on an MCAM collaborative grant. So we were kind of already used to collaborating with other colleges, creating training that would work. A little bit of it was Goldilocks, finding the right amount of training for the employers, not too much, not too little, making sure that the participants that we put through training were going to be successfully employed. That was always the goal, is to get them through the training with a credential, and also to get employment at the end. And the cherry on the top is if they continued on into further education. Next slide, please. So the problem that we were faced with when this grant was kicking off is that there was a 3.5% unemployment rate in the area. So that means that the people that are left in the labor pool are going to have some maybe barriers to employment, and we'll talk more about those. But what WIN brought to the table was this grant expertise, working with the Department of Labor, bringing this whole huge group of 10 community colleges, and I'm not sure of the exact number of Michigan Works agencies, but I know it was a lot, and just 6. So just helping us move through this great experience with the $6 million and trying to get the outcomes. And then Michigan Works is the next piece to this triangle. We did referrals, or they did referrals to us for training. They helped us with interviews at the very end. Super helpful. And we tried hosting the interviews at our college, and it seemed like it worked so much better when Michigan Works took it over, did our interview day at the end, brought the employers that they worked with, and plus we referred our own employers. The placement piece, if everybody at the end of the training did not get a job, our Michigan Works business services reps would help us keep sending out resumes until we got everyone placed. And the outreach was both for participants to come into the system, outreach for employers, and just outreach with the participants just to make sure that everybody was working together to get the participant through the training. And again, that wraparound services was crucial. I remember people getting gas cards, getting help with maybe a car repair, all sorts of help that was needed, for interview day. Do you have clothes? Okay, let's reach out to your Michigan Works caseworker and make sure that you have appropriate clothing for interview day. So that was helpful through the whole way. And at Schoolcraft College, what we had was, if you could transition, Melissa. Okay, thanks. the CNC training. So we did not have our robots yet when the grants first kicked off. So we went with our strong suit, which was the CNC training. Our instructor has previously owned a CNC company, so he knew a lot of what our different employers were looking for in terms of the training, the preparation, the soft skills, the hard skills. He knew just what to deliver. Plus, very approachable, which helped get the participants through the training without being overwhelmed. Again, we helped with the interviews in conjunction with Michigan Works. And placement, we have an employment coordinator and myself. We would continue to work until we got everyone placed that we could. And then again, just the outreach started over again as we started our next training cohort. Next slide, please. So the collaborative partnership between us and Michigan Works was tremendous. So Michigan Works brought some success tools, which was referring their clients to us. They would screen them, send them to us. And again, those wraparound services were so important. And then what Schoolcraft did, once we got the people, laid out very clear expectations. You're preparing for an entry-level full-time job in a plant or a shop. The attendance requirements, we tried to make them just like they were working. You had to call off if you were sick. You had a limited number of that you could miss in terms of the days in class. We help with the soft and the hard skills. So timeliness, respect for your employer, all hard work and not giving up, were all the soft skills. And the hard skills, our instructor provided, the use of the measuring tools, basic mathematics, manual machining on the mills and the lathes, and then the CNC programming, blueprint reading. So all the different skills that the employers would expect our participant to have. And then we went through resume prep with our career services staff and made sure that their resumes had the new skills that they had, plus, the skills that they may not have thought to put on a resume. Some of the returning citizens, we had 30% returning citizens. Some of them had really good work experience that they received while they were incarcerated. So we would include that. Oh, you were a tool room supervisor in the mattress making plant? Great, that's a great responsibility. You supervised cooks in the kitchen. So even the returning citizens, the experience they brought from their past incarceration, we used it, and as one of our participants said, that we bedazzled his resume. And then back to what Michigan Works provided is helping with the employer outreach, bringing their employers that they were working with and helping with that interview day. It was so organized and so successful. And sometimes we might have only had 8 or 10 participants completing, and they might have had 8 employers. So they opened the second half of the session for interview day to anyone in the community who might need work. So it made it work well for both the employers and us. And again, it was very helpful. And then finally back to Schoolcraft, we continued working on placement until we could place as many people as were still available. And the next slide, please. So throughout the training, throughout the 3 years, we did do 7 sessions, 64 participants. We did have a couple of self-pay students that also got in the mix. We were very proud. We ended up with an 87% placement rate, and then people achieved 112 credentials. So they were our certificate of completion and the NIMS, National Institute for Metalworking Skills, which was important for CNC. And then we did finally get our robots, and in 2019, we did a robotic welding cohort, and that one was really interesting. We bought them the welding starter kit so that they would have the helmet and the gloves, so they were safe with the PPE. And so they got one AWS credential, and then we also taught them the robotic welding portion of it. And then in 2020, we love doing these 3 cohorts a year, but 2020 dealt us the pandemic, and we started a new cohort. We were all very excited. And then when our instructor was quarantined, and then the college, kind of shut down to outside people coming in. So we sent our participants home with Tooling U and another CNC software. And this is where we found that digital divide that I'm sure you're aware of, where their poor things are trying to do their training on their cell phone. The library that they used to go to use a computer wasn't available. Our campus computer labs were not available. And one gentleman went through every last Tooling U lesson all on his cell phone, which was, showed his initiative. Next slide, please. So this was a little levity, a little fun here. So for our, some of the people that started this 2020 cohort did get employment and didn't come back to finish the training. So we went off campus, I think in March, and then we brought them back in June to finish up. And I happened to see a broom leaning against the lab, and I'm like, let's do a social distance award of the certification. And that was one thing. We always had a very nice ceremony, or graduation party, where we presented them with all the certificates that they earned in a nice little folder that they could use on an interview day. But again, this one was extra fun with the social distance style. Okay, next slide, please. So some of the success stories, again, this is a favorite part. It was really hard to come up with, the best ones to use. But if you'll go ahead to the next slide. So this particular worker was featured on the Department of Labor webpage as a featured success story. The problem was he was an older worker changing careers after an injury. So he actually came through us through Michigan Rehab Services. He took the training, and we always include a plant or an employer tour as part of our training so they can see what their work environment will be. And Gerald, we encouraged them to have like little conversations as they went through and ask lots of questions. And Gerald was, a hard worker throughout the training, and he had a super attitude. He got hired at Aztec, was always early, exceeded the expectations, and was promoted. And he was so excited, he came back to the next class and spoke at graduation day to provide them encouragement. Like, if you work hard, you can get employment and you can move up the way that I did. So that was awesome for Gerald. Next slide. Again, I mentioned we had 30% returning citizens in this that we served. And we actually had a Michigan Works person that actually referred us the returning citizens, and they faced huge challenges with the hiring process. You've heard of check the box. You have a conviction, and for some people that just excludes them. So people would call after they were referred and say, well, I have a past conviction, or I have a legal issue. You won't be able to find me a job. Philip was one of those people. You won't be able to help me. And I said, well, I can't make any guarantees, but we've had a great success in the past, and if you work hard and with the right attitude, you can get success as well. So he had a great skill set. All he needed was kind of like our kind of reputation backing him. He was hired at an aerospace company. And then during the interview day, he mentioned that his son had recently lost his job and they hired his son as well. So that was like super fun success story for Philip and his family. Next slide. And then again, the returning citizens may or may not have had a good educational foundation. So one of the great things that Grant does is builds a pathway for taking future credit classes. We always encourage them to come back. Kendra, look at her beautiful smiling face here, changed from here. And she was hired at an aerospace company, and she returned under another grant. I think it was a state grant under a pre-apprenticeship program, and took additional credit classes. Next slide, please. And then I always love that the participant success equals family success. A lot of the participants we get did not have confidence in their academics. They maybe had been away from it for a while, or just, didn't like school when they were younger. So our solution was skill building, so that they had the hard and the soft skills, encouragement from us and from Michigan Works, and then all those wonderful wraparound services. At the graduation day, we wanted the students to share their success. We'd allow them to bring a family member or members and their Michigan Works caseworkers to cheer them on. One single mom was so excited. She said, "I'm the only one in my family to graduate from anything." And then on this next picture, you'll see the event. I think this one probably had a pizza party, and everybody brought someone with them. And it's just like, it's so exciting to be there to witness, everyone achieving their goals. So that's it for me. And it's going to go back to Melissa. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sandy. And sorry to all of the participants. Since I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the option to mute myself. And, we have a lovely train that decided to go by during our presentation. So are there any questions so far through, Rana, are there any in the chat?
There are no questions in the chat yet, Melissa.
Okay, well, so we've got a few minutes left. I'm going to talk about sustainability and, kind of where we're going from here now that you've heard the ins and outs of how we're serving the participants, what type of training, what that success looks like. So to sustain this project, we just recently, as a collaborative, went after one of the H-1B1 workforce grants. So again, going back to what I originally talked about and how important the communication is between our partners, it wasn't just important in the beginning, in the planning phases. It's been an absolutely critical component of our success throughout the grant period. And, we're meeting with our partners frequently. So we're meeting as, all of the Michigan Works agencies and the community colleges are meeting during board meetings. We've got, specific to this project, we've got partner meetings. We're in constant communication over email and phone, and now virtually because of, the pandemic. So we've remained in constant communication, but not just talking about the project. We're also sharing, what our issues are, where we need help, where we need to possibly reallocate money between partners. So Rana indicated that, we were able to provide Semco, for instance, with additional training dollars to serve more participants than they originally committed to. So, we've been able to make adjustments like that to continue the success because we have those open and transparent conversations with all of our partners. So the snapshots, what you were seeing, those little donuts, we like to call them, where you can see your progress, we have those for all of our partners. We have all of our shared outcomes, and we're sharing those amongst the team very frequently. So, not only does each MWA, for instance, know their own outcomes and where they sit at any given moment, they also know where the partner MWAs are at. So our individuals from Semco, from DESC, from Oakland County, from Michigan Works Southeast, from GST Michigan Works, from all over the region, Macomb, St. Clair, all of our partners, we know how we're each performing. We know where we each have problems. And we know, say like with the training side of things, if there's one training provider that is, not enrolling as many students or not partnering as heavily, for instance, Schoolcraft is a great example of a partner that was at the table from the beginning to the end and now into the future with this new grant opportunity. But some of our other partners, maybe they didn't have the curriculum, like many community colleges. Maybe they had issues with staffing for their advanced manufacturing programs, because we all know that in skilled trades, you can, our individuals, they can traditionally make more money in an industry position than they can in education in a lot of cases. So, making sure we find the right people to train, sometimes those are the things that we were helping with. So that open communication really, really became critical. And we understood that through the planning for the Catalyst project and throughout implementation and delivery of the outcomes and serving participants. So we kept that at the forefront of our mind with the One Workforce grant opportunity. And when we decided to go after it, all of the partners were on board, and we decided to do it a little bit differently because of some of the assistance that was needed on the education side of things. So we went after the ceiling award. We went after $10 million and ultimately got it. So the way that we kind of broke this out, what made it a little different is we still have the bulk of that funding going through the Michigan Works agencies specific to participant training and the supportive services that go along with that. But we also dedicated 1.7 million of our award specifically to the community colleges for the purpose of curriculum development. So the H-1B1 workforce is also a little different in that the America's Promise or Catalyst initiative was solely focused on advanced manufacturing. And this One Workforce grant is allowing us to expand that foundation and that training model and career pathway development in our region into transportation and information technology. So we have the employer input, we have the data, we have those commitments up front from the industry side of things for all three of these sectors. And we were really able to fine tune the way that we approach this through our experience with Catalyst. So we're in a slightly different world now thanks to the pandemic. But we decided to take a step back and focus on the success that we've had through the Catalyst program and build our outcomes from there. So our collective outcomes that we hope to achieve. So this grant is just getting kicked off. We had our partner kickoff meeting just a few weeks ago, actually. And our period of performance is through 2025. And in that time period, we're hoping to serve another 875 individuals. So our target for Catalyst is 900. We're hoping to serve another 875. But really, we didn't put this in writing, but as a collaborative, we're hoping to far exceed this. Because we built these metrics and these anticipated outcomes off of just our performance with advanced manufacturing. And now we have the added ability to train individuals in information technology, specifically in cybersecurity and transportation. So we've got some really great opportunities here to exceed all of the metrics that we set for ourselves and that the Department of Labor has for us. And one of the determining factors for the Department of Labor providing this award to us was our performance on the America's Promise grant, on the Catalyst grant, and the way they were so fascinated with the way that we work so closely with our partners, and said that, a lot of areas around the nation, they talk about that type of collaboration, but they don't actually live it to better serve their participants. So we're really proud of that. So another really cool part of this One Workforce grant as we're moving forward, that had not been a piece of the Catalyst grant, is taking the education involvement a step further with the curriculum development, but also tying outcomes to that. So we're going to have a curriculum development committee that is going to be informed by industry, and we'll have industry at the table, but all of our community colleges will come together, and we'll have new programs and updated, enhanced curriculum as a result of that industry involvement. And then we will also be forming a transportation employer collaborative, because that is one employer or industry group that we don't have a lot of activity with now, and we'd like to increase that. So that was one thing that we committed to, is creating those partnerships between the MWAs and the community colleges and these transportation employers. So we'll be convening those employers throughout the life cycle of the grant, making sure that any talent needs that they have or skill gaps that they're seeing with their current workforce, that we're working together, our MWAs and our community colleges, we're working together to cover the gaps. So that brings us to the end of the presentation that we have. What questions can we answer?
Melissa, there's a question in the chat. It says, is it too late for businesses to become a partner? And if not, how do they apply, or who do they send a proposal to?
No, that's an excellent question. So I'm actually I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody again. So that's a great question. We have obviously the community colleges and the MWAs. That's who you should contact. Contact the Michigan Works agency that represents your area. Contact the nearest community college or the community college that serves your area, and make sure that they're aware of your interest in talent related to these pipelines. Make sure they're, they know what level of involvement you want to have. Because Sandy talked a lot about the employer events that we held. We had some reverse job fairs, and we really bring employers in to interview candidates. And in some cases throughout the region, we had people employed before they had finished their training. So we'd love to partner, and please reach out to your contacts. Rana or Sandy, did you guys want to add anything to that?
I'll just add, if you don't know maybe, or don't have a great relationship with your Michigan Works agency or community college, I'll pop the email address that Melissa provided, and you can always email that address, and just we'll put you in touch with the right person.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, I'll read the next question. If that's, you want me to read the next question, Melissa?
Yeah, go ahead.
At its inception, how did you find partners and gain buy-in? How did the team learn to work together?
That's an excellent question. So some of it were, it was a combination, I would say, and then I'll have Rana and Sandy jump in as well. And then also, if there are any partners in this breakout session, in this workout session, please unmute yourself and speak up as well. But I would say it was a combination of the partnerships that were already existing between some of our Michigan Works partners and the community colleges, and what relationships they individually had with employers. And then also a combination, that combined with the involvement with WIN, and the willingness to, kind of be vulnerable, honestly, and talk through some of the, the pitfalls or the areas where they maybe have experienced issues in the past, just the willingness to participate in a collaborative of that nature that really drove that success for us. And the buy-in really came from, as Sandy pointed out, our unemployment rate was low. We were having trouble connecting with individuals, meeting the employer's needs across the region, and specifically with occupations related to robotics and automation. So, it wasn't really, we all just had to put our egos aside and say, there's a gap, and what can we do to work better together to fill this gap? And, the result, hopefully we've done a good job of conveying this, but the result is phenomenal. And we're all very proud of the piece of the puzzle that we represent. Sandy or Rana, did you guys want to add anything?
I was going to wait to see if Sandy wanted to hop in, but I'll just add, I think early on, having all the partners at the table, when Win was developing the grant proposal, they actually sent us drafts of it and asked for our input on specific pieces. I think they recognized that the community college partners and the Michigan Works agencies had more in-depth, I think, knowledge of some of the ins and outs of these types of programs. And so they weren't afraid to ask us for input. And I think that just maybe contributed to the success in setting it up for success. I also think early on, as we were developing the proposal, having a one-pager or short two-pager to help with communicating to other potential partners about what our goals were and what our plan was, I think also contributed to buy-in. So making sure we had an executive summary of what we were proposing certainly contributed, I think, to gaining more partners on the onset.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we knew that there was a need for more training, and the only way that we were going to get funding is to be part of a collaborative like this. The large grants that are out there, you need that employer or the large regional cooperation to get those grants to provide you the money to train people. And then one of my first things when I came into workforce development was, who are my Michigan Works local branch offices, and get to know both the career development people for my referrals and then the business services reps for the placement. And I spent a lot of time, working with the branch offices, and eventually we ended up working with, I think one class we had like 5 different Michigan Works offices, making up one class, and Michigan Rehab. So it was always just such a blend of everybody working together.
Mm-hmm.
Melissa, there's a request to share the slide with the contact information. I think it was second.
Oh, sure.
Third slide.
Yep.
There's another. Yep. While you do that, there's another question. How long did it take from the training inception to the final training implementation? I don't know if you want me to answer that, Melissa, or if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'll just say, with all of the different community college partners that we were working with in the beginning, some were ready to go right away. They actually had to slow down so that we could get MOUs and agreements in place. And others, like I think Sandra mentioned, they didn't have robotics equipment at first, and so they started with CNC. So every college was a little bit different in terms of how long it took them to kick off with training. Some were ready to go right on the onset because they already had the infrastructure in place to provide the training. They already had a great relationship with their local Michigan Works agencies. And so for those, they really kicked things off quickly. And I think they actually got through most of their outcomes in like 2 years. So for some, it was very fast. And for others, it took a little bit longer. Hopefully that answers the question, or if either of you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, I think Rana, your answer is perfect. And I'll just add that's one of the reasons why we decided to add the curriculum development component to this new grant, because we saw, exactly that some of our partners were ready to go and others were not as ready. It, just depend, which area we were talking about, but we wanted to make sure that we provided those resources to all of our partners.
And then the last question, maybe Sandra, you'd be perfect for this. How long did it take to complete the training? So maybe specific to your trainings that you offered. How long did it take?
Yep, I meant to mention that. So we did, this was kind of that Goldilocks thing. It was 120 hours of the CNC training plus the 10 hours for OSHA, and some of the soft skills and resume prep added a little bit of time as well. I have to share my instructor for workforce training in the morning, and then he teaches credit classes at night. So we had a mornings, usually 4 or 5 days a week from 8 to noon. And then, so it'd take about 6 weeks to get through the training, but it was 120 hours of actual CNC and related instruction.
Thanks. Those were all the questions. And just to note that, those were the course durations over at Schoolcraft. Some took as long as 12 weeks or shorter. And so just there's a range, I think, depending on the type of training and the training provider. And like Sandra said, like if it was every day or every other day, that certainly had an impact. Okay, those were all the questions that I see.
Perfect. Lupe, we'll hand it back to you after saying thank you to all of you that joined us. We hope that you enjoyed the presentation. We hope you learned something. And we hope that you'll reach out to us if you have any questions.
Thank you, ladies. So just a reminder that I have attached the link to the survey, and we are eager to hear and to see your feedback for the conference and this specific session. So if you could take a couple minutes to complete that. This is the end of the presentation today, and I would like to thank our presenters and appreciate everyone's time. And I hope all of you have had some information that you can take away with you today. Enjoy the feature of the conference. Exhibitor and networking break is next. Take time this after the session to video chat with an exhibitor or watch their informational video, or go to a networking tab to be randomly paired with another attendee for 2 minutes to meet with new people. Thank you, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.